All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I believe this is episode 46. Had another episode that I was supposed to record, but it's still stuck in editing. The person wanted to edit it, so that would probably be episode 47 as a correction. But I'm so excited. This has been a long journey, and as I start these off, I just want to say I would not be able to be here without the people who are listening, the people that are supporting. So thank you all, for your support, for your words of encouragement, and even for, I know some of you guys have reached out to some of the guests I've had on here before to you either connect with them or network or which have you. So appreciate you guys doing that. But without further ado, because you guys know I can talk a lot, I'm going to have my guests introduce themselves and go from there.
Thank you so much. Hey, y'all. My name is Natalie Clark. I use she, her pronouns. I am 23 years old, and I'm from the state of Utah. I spent about 6 years here in the foster care system here, broken up both as a baby and as a teen. And then I went and got my bachelor's in social work, and I decided to work for my state agency to try and improve the privacies and practices that we currently have existing.
Awesome. Well, you've had the opportunity to listen to some of my other episodes. You know the flow, you know how it goes. I like to dive deep. And not only for myself, but for the audience as well, get to know who you are and when your experience started. So if you can kind of walk us through your experience.
Love to. So it all kind of started right at birth. My mom was struggling with substance abuse. It was an illness that had been passed through her family, and we were living in motels and homeless shelters, and I ended up going through a few rehabs with her that did allow you to keep your child while going through. But unfortunately, some of those ended up really not being successful, and there was a lot of neglect going on. I was found walking around the street with a very full diaper and really dirty, no one really around. I would just kind of walk around with a baby bottle of Coca-Cola, and that's just all I drank as like a little baby, a toddler. So neglect came on. I went into the system and I was brought into foster care, and I ended up going into the Christmas box, which is our group home for our younger little kids here in our state. And I went through a few different families that I do remember, but I remember being with one family in specific. And dad was a doctor, mom was stay at home. I had two big sisters, a dog named Charlie, a cat named Precious, a pool, a hot tub, like a dream life, athletic family, really healthy. And they wanted to adopt me. And it was going to be a picture perfect life. But in the state of Utah, in order to adopt a kid from foster care, both parental rights have to be terminated. So at that time, nobody knew who my father was. My mom had never told my father that I was his daughter. It was very private. And so then the fight began to try to get my father to give up custody, which did not happen. He did find out about me and decide that he wanted me. So I was then taken from that family after a little over a year of being with them and placed with my biological father and his mother. And that's where it all really began.
Okay. So a couple of things stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Christmas box is a place where they place the little kiddos.
Yeah.
Like I'm curious to know why they call it the Christmas box.
That is a good question. I tell you. There's a Christmas in the logo, Christmas tree.
Do they run specials, on the dot one? Like, I'm trying to figure out.
Well, there is one memorable piece of it that is kind of special that makes it a little bit less intimidating is there's a giant Christmas tree in the lobby, and it has hundreds of stuffed animals under it. And every time you come to the Christmas box, you get to pick a stuffy. And so it's the Christmas box. Like, there's always a present under the tree for every kid that comes. And it just like, I remember having so many Christmas box bears, and I loved them.
That's awesome. So, he spoke about, they tried to find your dad and and everything. So I guess, kind of diving into that, were you ever able to experience that adoption, or because of the whole, or because of not finding your dad?
Because they found my dad, the custody was given to my dad, so I wasn't able to be put up for adoption and go with that family that wanted to take me. So I ended up placed with my father.
So what was that experience like, being with your father?
I will say it was one that could have and should have been avoided. And I'm going to preface this with that because I've been personally told by the courts that it shouldn't have happened and apologized for it happening. But ultimately, my father also struggled from the illness of substance abuse, had been battling it his entire life. And he had a lot of mental health struggles. He unfortunately was unstable, never held down a job of his own, lived with his mother, and just had a lot of problems with his mental health. So once I was placed with my father, he was, of course, never used to being a father or anything like that, never really even having responsibilities. So all of the responsibilities of raising me then went on to my grandmother, who was 75, LDS. She'd already raised 5 kids. She had 20 grandkids. But out of the graciousness and goodness of her heart, she raised me with all she could. But when I moved in, that made both myself and her the targets of his abuse. Both emotional, physical, verbal, just went on for years and years and years, despite reports from the school and neighbors of my black eyes and bruises and the screaming and the fighting. Nothing ever happened. And bless my grandma's heart, but religion, sometimes there is a vibe of keep it under the rug. This is family business. We don't let other people in our business. We're going to pray. Our problems will be solved through praying. We don't need to let other people into our business. We just kind of ignore the white elephant in the room, sweep it under the rug. And that's ultimately what happened, is everything that was happening to me was swept under the rug because she was also being abused, and there was just a thought that nobody should know.
So you experienced dysfunction from birth to what age?
Well, so I was with my mom from about 1 to about 3 in the homeless shelters and motels and rehabs and such. And then around 3 or 4, I was with that family that wanted to take me. And then around the age of 5 or 6 is when I went with my father. That's when I started kindergarten, and that's when I was with him. And then when I was with my grandma and my dad, I was there from kindergarten up until 9th grade. And that whole time he was abusing prescription pills. And as a 5-year-old, I didn't really understand. But when you learn how to count, you know how your parents give you like pennies and nickels and dimes. I was counting Percocets and $100 bills. And I was walking into strange cars and leaving a bag and picking something up. But I didn't understand, right? Because dad's telling me to do this. And so that went on for many years, despite everyone knowing it, because it was just, let's sweep it under the rug.
Right. And this is something I spoke about a couple times on my podcast about, it's okay to have a spiritual and faith background.
Absolutely.
But it becomes, what's the word I'm looking for? You become a part of the problem when you utilize spirituality and your faith background to condone the abuse or condone the wrongdoing in any faction. At
what point is your faith potentially or hurting someone else? You know what I mean? Where do we draw that line?
And I don't know what faith actually says, well, we're gonna sweep it under the rug. I don't know what Bible, what book.
I never read it. I can't tell you.
I don't know. And that may be, because us as human beings, we take what we want from portions of, whichever, and then we fix it into our own little narrative to make us feel okay, and sadly, that has been embedded in certain cultures, what happens in the family stays in the family. You don't go outside of that. You don't, that's disloyalty or whichever, or, you know, Uncle Johnny or Bob, they like that. You know, you just got to stay away. No, that's not okay that they're like that. You know?
Right. No,
you
we
know,
don't
let's
that.
talk about it. You know, like, you know,
why are they like that though?
Yeah. And you know, in my experience and expertise, you know, things are rooted, you know. I spoke on another podcast how I explained my journey to healing, and I fought to try to understand my parents.
With Scout, right?
Yes.
I love that episode. I connected with that so much because that's what I had to do too. I had to understand that there was a generational trauma that existed way before me. That was passed down. They did the best they could with what they had. Not an excuse that they didn't do as good as they should have, but they did as good as they could. And I have to be graceful with that because I'm doing as best as I can.
Definitely, because the fight to try to get your questions answered, like I tell people all the time, there's not going to be one answer that your parents or whoever your abuser was give you that will satisfy you when you're ready to ask that question. There's just no answer that, you know, because there's no excuse for it.
Exactly.
You know,
are you looking for an answer, or are you looking for someone to give you an excuse? Because the reality is there isn't an answer, so the only thing they can provide you with is an excuse they think you're going to want to hear, but does that do you any justice? Like, is there really any point in you getting that? Does that make you feel good? No.
Right. But that's my little ramble. Let me circle back. So, you know, you experienced, so you were with your mom, and then you went to different shelters and what have you, and then you went to the Christmas box. For the Christmas box, you went to the they were fostering you at first, and then they were like, I want to adopt you. So you went to that family, and then that didn't follow through because they eventually found your dad, and your dad said, okay, yeah, I'm gonna take her in, you know, and you stay with your dad from kindergarten to ninth. So that was a big period of time.
It was a stretch. And I will tell you, there wasn't a single year of that I didn't get a visit from a DCFS caseworker pulling me into the principal's office, asking me about what happened to my eye or my cheek or my lip. You know, there wasn't a year that went by. Sometimes it would be more than one a year.
So that's interesting because I've been having several conversations with people, you know, talking about my experience with investigations and what we call here CPS, Child Protective Services, and what have you. And, you know, when you have behaviors and different things like that, you know, that arise in schools, you know, Child Protective Services can be called, or if the teacher found that different things could happen. But a lot of times, in my personal experience and some other people I've spoken to experience, it sometimes never came back founded with anything, and you just stayed in the circumstance. And I you know, I'm interested to hear how many times were, you know, there proof, evidence, physically.
If you ask me that question in about 5 months, I can tell you, because I'm in the process of submitting grandma reports for all of my DCFS case records, all of my court records. I want to know, because the sad reality is my life is in those files. I have no one to tell me who I was as a kid. So I'm gonna have to read caseworker notes to see what kind of kid I was. You know what I mean? So I want to know what happened. I want to know where I went and why all this happened. And so because that's a right that is afforded to us, and we have the right to do that, I want to see what that process is like and get that information. So I will follow up with you because I want to know just as bad as you.
Definitely. So, you know, stay tuned, y'all. We're going to come back. We'll probably be live then, you know.
I do want to throw out, that's why I brought up that whole sweeping under the rug, and that because I really think one of the reasons that whole unfounded always happened, because, oh no, we're fine. Nothing happens on our home. We are a perfect LDS home. You know, nothing happens here. So like that is, I believe personally, what caused it. And my dad, I will say, was a smooth talker. He had some charisma that scares me to my core. And so I think he could talk himself out of anything, and I've watched it. So it could have had a part, but I really think that sweeping it under that rug and that silence is what caused that to keep going for so many years. When other people spoke up, everyone else silenced it.
Wow. So you were there to 9th grade. So take me further on. 10th grade on up.
So 9th grade, I got myself in trouble. So I'll give you 2 seconds of backstory before I get into 9th grade. 6th grade, I had been doing visits overnight with my mom. My mom was married and had a husband. I watched him die at 7 o'clock in the morning. My dad was very unhappy about that. He didn't like that I had a relationship with that father. It was very traumatic. After going through all that and my dad being angry at me for being upset for his death, and after watching it, I started smoking marijuana the summer after 6th grade. I started smoking marijuana, honestly, to fit in. To be honest, like some of the cool kids were doing it and I wanted friends, and I was like not a happy kid and I was not living the best life. So I wanted to make friends and fit in. So I started smoking pot, and throughout 7th and 8th grade, I, dabbled in smoking some marijuana here and there. At the time, my dad was away from my grandma's home because there finally was a police report with a lot of bruising on my face and some things that had happened that didn't get excused. And so he had moved out of our home to a second home. So I was free from him, kind of. So it was just me and my grandma for those 2 years till I went into middle school, and I got caught with marijuana at school. And that is when I was sent to a rehab program. Well, before I went to rehab, I went to a foster home. It was an amazing foster home. Best foster home I could have ever asked to be a part of. And I tried trial reunification with my mom. I was going to do a trial home placement, but that trial home placement was very rushed. As you know, when you're trying to do trial home, they don't give you a whole lot of time to get everything together. So my mom had to get herself off of a semi truck, get an apartment, change her job, and beat her lifelong substance abuse in order to get me home. But the judge sent me home with my mom, and it didn't work out. And I failed a drug test for marijuana again. Well, I had marijuana in my system, and I had a false positive for spice, actually. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a synthetic marijuana, but I had actually never smoked it. So I got put in juvenile detention for a couple of weeks, and I demanded a retest because I said, I'll tell you I smoke pot. I will be honest about that. I'm having a hard time, but I don't smoke no spice, y'all. So after a couple of months or a couple of weeks in the DT, I went to court and I got that retest, and those results were negative, just like I told them. But because there was still levels of THC in my system, they said, well, we already have a bed ready for you at a residential program, so you're going. So that sent me to 10 months in a residential program with young kids that were using meth and heroin, and I smoked pot and tried an alcoholic drink once. So it was the start to a new ride.
So I'm just putting this together.
It's a messy story. That's why I was like, I don't know what podcast episode is long enough for this, honey.
So you was with mom, bounced from shelters, Christmas box, foster to adoptive home, but it didn't follow through.
Yep.
Then with dad at grandma's house, and then with grandma, and then with another foster home, and then
and there's stays in the group home in between all this. So like when you come into care, you go to the group home until you get the foster home, and then that. So like there's group home stays, but I don't mention every single one of them.
Yep, and some filler group homes in there, y'all. Yep. I'm just building the timeline. You know how it is. And then retested after court and what have you. Then you go to a residential. Yep. So because I want to make sure we highlight all these different experiences that you have, because it, we building a trauma bridge.
Yes,
full of different logs and blocks that were trauma moments. So someone who tried to fit in, really wasn't excited or wanted to utilize drugs, but did it to fit in. Now it's in a place full of people who were like, actually, this is what I need. This is what I do. Um, what was that experience like in the residential facility?
I was shocked. I was shocked. I mean, I grew up with parents that were addicts. I had seen things that I had never seen, but I had never met 16 to 18-year-old girls so openly talking about the things they had to do and been through in order to get their fix. I didn't understand the dependency. I had kind of blocked out my mom's own dependency and just tried to pretend like it wasn't what it was. And then it came right in front of me because I was in front of all these girls and I saw so much of my mother in them. If I'm being honest, I was like, wow, like this makes sense. But then I had the most crazy realization of, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not addicted to any drugs. I'm very uncomfortable in this situation because if you know what it's like in congregate care and group homes and stuff, it kind of becomes like a trauma war where it's like, oh, well, I've been through this and I did this. This is the drug I did. And it becomes glorification of the drugs and the past experiences. I didn't have that. I had drank a Mike and Ike's, like, or a Red's apple beer. Like, I didn't have anything to talk about with anyone. I didn't know half the drugs they were talking about. I was 14 years old. I didn't know. I was a baby. So it was really isolating, but it also kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone to learn more about what addiction really feels like, what it really is, where it comes from. And it kind of got me started understanding my own parents, I guess, is kind of the route I took it. And do some therapy for my own trauma.
Okay. Wow.
9 months.
And so you spent 9 months there. What was after that?
After that, I was placed with a foster home. Willie and Jennifer were so young and so fun and just the sweetest. The dad had, 2 biological teen sons, and it was a nice, beautiful home. They were a really young, active couple, and everything kind of seemed perfect. But the 2 of them actually broke up. They were not married, which in my state, in order to foster, you have to be married. So I don't even know how they got around that or if that just wasn't a thing back then. But because they were married, the foster dad couldn't keep us foster girls in his home alone. And the mom was moving back in with her mom since she wouldn't be living with him. And she couldn't take me or my foster sister that were there. So we were taken back to the group home.
So now you're back at the group home.
Now you're back at the group home. No reason of my own. No, nothing that I did, but.
How long did you stay at the group home this time?
I don't know. With that one, I know my next placement, I was connected through a girl who had come for respite at my home, and I had really connected with her foster mom. And so Wanda got me out of there pretty quickly that time, I'm pretty sure. I don't think I was in the group home that long because the agency had been in touch and said like, hey, Wanda, would you take Nat? And she was willing because I was really close friends with her foster daughter.
Okay. So you went there.
Yep.
What was that experience?
Went to Wanda. She was my girl. I was living with my sister, and they're all my sisters. Once you're in care together, they're just your siblings. So I'm gonna refer to a lot of sisters. I mean, none of them are really biological, but in my heart, they are my family. And it was the best experience. I got to live having a sister. I got to just kind of. Wanda was laid back, but she treated us like her own children. So, an actual allowance. She would give us rides to school. We didn't have to take bus or walk. Like, she would cook us dinner. She got me a birthday cake, and she was the first placement to ever get me a birthday cake for my birthday. And there was just a lot of little pieces that made me feel like she cared about me and that I was real. She took me to the store and bought me my own towels when I first moved in. Just little things that were just like, no, this is you. You're welcome in this home. I want you to feel like this is your space. And it was like a dream. I thought that I was going to end up being with them forever. But Wanda had some things come up in her own personal life with her own biological son, and the stress of her own personal life conflicted, and she wasn't able to keep both of us. And she had to choose to give one of us back. And because my foster sister had been there longer, like it just wouldn't be fair. That was a bond that had been there longer. So I was on the chopping block because I was the newbie, you know.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go?
But I will say I still have a relationship with Miss Wanda. She, checks in on me all the time. I go visit her. There's no hard feelings. She is very open and forthcoming with me what was happening, and I understand things happen in people's life, so I don't hold it against her. She says every day she wishes she would have just kept me, and she regrets it. But shit happens, and we need to give people grace because it's hard to go into being a foster parent. And I know we shun placement disruption so much, and it really uproots our life, but sometimes it has to happen, and I understand that. That's the one where I will say totally had to happen.
Definitely. What happened? Where did you go after this? Did the group home?
Yeah.
To the group home. Look. I'm starting to get the pattern again. I'm starting to catch your drift.
There's a little, you just gotta hang out for a minute.
Just get your stuff together.
But
go to the gas station.
Every time I went to the group home, every single time I got my eyebrows done by the homegirls, I got my hair braided. They did me right every time I stopped by. So I will say it was always a nice trip to see the girls.
man, it's just like a road trip,
The staff became more of my parents than any of the foster families I'd been with, because they knew me. They'd known me longer. They'd seen me all different stages of my life. Right. Like at that point, like I was more comfortable in a group home than any foster home.
Yeah, man. So what did that look like after this? You at the group home, what was next?
After that, I went to another family who was very, very new to foster care, I think. I was like one of their first, I think they had fostered in the past or something. But it was a really loving Polynesian family. I loved them to death. When I moved in, it was a huge culture shock. I am a white girl that grew up on Kraft macaroni and Lay's potato chips. Okay, I walked in the first day and I looked in the fridge and I saw a pig just sitting there looking at me, and it just naked, just right there in the fridge looking at me. And I had some issues adjusting to the culture because they were very hands-off with me. They didn't really set a whole lot of like rules or expectations. Like there was no family dinner that they like cooked in the home normally unless we were like going to a relative's house or like going to a church event or like a party or something where it was like a big cookout and luau and stuff. So I really was pushed into a sense of independence that I didn't really know I had to reach at that point because I was still in high school, didn't really understand. So I just kind of started living off Little Caesars pizzas and dating a 25-year-old guy that let me live in his house because my foster parents didn't really care if I was there, and they never checked up on me or,
Wait a minute.
Food. Okay. So I just stopped going home.
Wait a minute. And like, look, you guys have to excuse me, but like, I've been doing this so long. When I hear wild things that are like crazy through my trauma, I laugh at those things, and some people are like, y'all okay? But like, when you've been through some stuff, like it doesn't like shock you as much, but okay. Very hands off. The presence of you being there really isn't a grave concern,
Or acknowledged, really. Like no one spoke English around the house. Like they spoke English, but they wouldn't speak it around the house. So it was just kind of like, I wasn't really there unless I was being spoken to, which was fine. Like I mean, it wasn't fine, but like at times I was okay with it. It didn't bother me, but I would have liked someone to talk to me a little bit.
So how old were you at this point?
I would say I was just barely turning 16.
Barely turning 16. So you've somehow in that mix started dating a 25-year-old.
Yeah, somehow, some way. I mean, he had a car, so I didn't have to ride the bus no more. He would give me a ride to school, pick me up from school. He'd make sure I was fed. Like, he took care of me in a way that the foster homes didn't even take care of me. And so I just kind of stopped going home, and my foster home would just call me whenever my caseworker showed up and they'd say, oh, she's at the school, she'll be right here. And they would call me and say, Natalie, come here, your caseworker's here. And I'd zip my butt across the entire city to get back to that foster home.
Wow.
But I didn't feel comfortable in that home. I really liked the family. They were really nice people, and I felt love in their community. Their community was amazing. Their culture was amazing. It was such a beautiful experience. But I never felt comfortable or really cared about. I was a paycheck in that home. I was, just a paycheck, and it was pretty clear. And a lot of things were stolen from me by the mom and the family, and like all my clothes and all my stuff were just taken from me. So I knew that I was not really loved in that home. And so I went to the 25-year-old man that was willing to love me.
Okay. So bear with me here. Because, I work with transition age youth. Mm-hmm. Do a lot of peer support mentoring for young men and young ladies within this age group of 14 to on up. Mm-hmm. You would not believe how many young ladies meet an older guy, and that's their story.
Oh yeah, he's not the only older guy.
Right.
He's not the first older guy. My mama set me up with one when I was 13 on the trial home placement with her, and that's one of the reasons that didn't go too well. But
so, because of the importance that I feel like this needs to be highlighted,
it's huge.
Are you comfortable kind of explaining how, if you don't mind me saying, how you got groomed by this older guy? And what that trauma did to affect you going to him?
Absolutely. So I would say that grooming didn't start with that 25-year-old one when I was in high school. That grooming started with the 24-year-old that my mother actually set me up with when I was on that trial home placement with her. So mind you, I was in 9th grade at that time. So I was about 14 or 15 when I was with my mom. And there was this boy that was a lot older, and he was really cute. And my mom just thought we would be so cute together because he would watch me so she could go smoke meth in the apartment next door, and she wouldn't have to worry about me. He'd drive me places, this, that, and the third, nothing to worry about. And then it worked out to where if she set me up with him, then I wouldn't even have to live with her anymore. I could go live with him and his parents, whom were a mother that was also using the same substances, and a father that had just gotten out of 14-year prison stint for underage assault charges, sexual assault charges. 14-year stint, let's just move her in with these strangers and let her date this guy. He seems perfectly fine to me, says my mom. He loves you. He's nice to you. I see the way he looks at you. So that actually really started when I was with my mom. My mom and I told her I had a crush, and she just supported it. I had never had like a boyfriend at that time. And so my first boyfriend was a grown man that would take me wherever I wanted to go and fly me around the world if I wanted.
So this has became, if you don't mind me saying, a norm.
It became the norm. It was what was comfortable. It was what I knew. It was.
So, because, I be very straight, I like to take these moments. I believe this is very educational for the foster parents, for the social workers, and even for the alumni listening and what have you. So you said you were around the age 13 with your mom when this had happened.
13 or 14, ninth grade.
So that was your boyfriend and what have you. So at this point,
I'll tell you, I wasn't smart. He was all over my social media. Like, people knew. I will tell you, it was no surprise that there was this little girl with a grown-ass man covered in tattoos and piercings all over her Instagram, right? So it wasn't like people couldn't tell.
So people knew. So I'm just gonna ask. So at what point throughout your experience, did sexual activity became a part of a norm or in these relationships or what have you?
Right at the start. There were 4 different experiences of molestation and rape in my life, all that were really incidental. None of them were actually the same person. It was all different people each time. So I think that kind of made that sexuality and that promiscuity a little bit stronger, because that sexual trauma had never been dealt with at all. It had never been addressed. One of the times that it happened, I was on a visit with my mom, and my mom was so scared because she wanted to still have visits with me that I couldn't tell anyone it happened, because we didn't want to lose our visits together. So we just can't talk about it. No one can know you went through this, right? So I just had to hold on to it and bury it and suppress it. And then finally, by the age of 14, with a grown man, he really took advantage of that, and he knew the stories, he knew what I'd been through, and the relationship was sexual within, I'd say, probably the first week.
Wow.
And that's kind of what it was based on, right? Like, I was a 14-year-old girl. I got to live with a boyfriend. I got to have sex all the time. I got to eat junk food and smoke weed. It was just a complete disconnect from what my entire reality had ever been, but it was what made me feel comfortable, right? I'm disassociating from that trauma. I'm confirming that promiscuity and that sexual trauma, and I'm feeling protected by a man, right? Because I've been missing this protection from a man my whole life. The man that was supposed to protect me ended up hurting me. So who else, what other man will protect me? Well, I found him, I thought.
Right. Wow. So circling back to, this was 13, 14, and some before then. 16 in high school at this point with a 25-year-old. So take me forward.
So with that 25-year-old, the second adult boyfriend, I will tell you, he didn't seem like the typical, like, he wouldn't have sex with me until I reached, I think 17. He was like, I won't have sex with you till you're 17, but you can do every other sexual act and favor on me until then, which was really weird. That wasn't like the ex that I had. So I was like, it made me think, he's not like a creep. He's not grooming me at all. He won't even have sex with me, right? So he must not be that kind of guy. So I felt even more safe around him, right? I was like, this isn't cradle robbing. This isn't gross. He even thinks it's kind of weird, but we just connect. We just feel each other on that level. So that was another situation where I ended up starting to live with him, spend every night at his house until the caseworker would come and I would go to my foster home. And that placement, I actually never found out why I was taken from that placement. No one ever gave me any peace of mind or closure as to why it was ending. I was just told that I was being moved placements. And that's when me and that boy, he was like, well, I don't think I can come pick you up from this place that you're going to live now. And so I just kind of got ghosted because I wasn't as available to him now because I was changing proctor agencies. I was going to have a little bit more supervision, right? The new home might not just let me live with him. So once that access to me was being cut off, I got cut off.
Okay. Wow, man. I feel the need to say this because I know you're not done. But this one to say, and I don't make sure because this can be very triggering to some people.
Yeah, it can be.
But I also know that
trigger warning, y'all. Sorry, meant to throw that out there.
These is what needs to be. These stories are what is, because I can't speak today. What needs to be heard?
Yes. Tired of my story being sugar-coated for someone else's game. Yeah.
Yes, because this is happening every day. Every day. Young ladies being groomed out of foster homes, out of residential.
I'm working with them all day, every day. And it's happening today. And it's happening worse than it was happening when I was in foster care. And I've got many stories to my own foster siblings. It's happening to all of us. It is not just one of us. It's not just me. It's every girl that I was in foster care with. Like, we are being targeted for a reason, for one thing or another, whether that's sex trafficking, that's grooming by an overage, like an older partner. There's a lot of different pieces to this. They're all a little bit different, but I'd say every single one are being targeted in some way.
Yeah. So, going towards this timeline, walk me through
how it ended.
Yeah, walk me through after. We gonna try to get towards the end of high school, and then we're gonna go towards after that.
So after I left that family and was placed with another placement, that placement wasn't very authentic. Again, I was another paycheck, another mortgage payment, and that foster placement didn't cook, didn't provide anything, no food. So I just kind of pursued my adulthood. I got a job. I started working as much as I could and started dating another older boy. Surprise, surprise. I bet you didn't expect that would happen. Shut you out of nowhere. So after that, I was dating this boy for about a month, and my foster mom came to me and told me she was retiring, so I would be sent back to the group home. Again, this was nothing to do with me, no reason for my disruption. I was trying to get myself through high school. I just wanted some stability. I was really close to being able to age out of the foster care system in about a year and a half. So I had two options in my head. I'm either going to run because I am sick of foster care. I'm sick of being moved to everyone's homes when I didn't do anything wrong and I don't need to be here. I'm just here because no one wanted me from my own family, like farther family biologically. So I then tried to figure out other ways to not go back to the group home and to not have to go into the system. And this boyfriend I was dating just so happened to have the same last name as me. So his parents actually said they were my aunt and uncle, and they took family guardianship of me in court. They said that they were my biological aunt and uncle, last names to prove it, and they got me out of foster care into their care. So I technically, I would have aged out about 7 months later. But of course, 17-year-old me, I was about to graduate high school early. I was doing packets and credits. I was trying to work full time. I wanted to get a job or I wanted to get a license so that I could drive myself. I couldn't get a license while I was in foster care, but my boyfriend's parents would give me a car and help me get my license if I was in their custody, you know what I mean? So, in my idea, it was what was best for me because nothing else, I had no other options. So I got them to take family guardianship of me right before I technically would have aged out. And that started 4 years of mental and emotional and physical abuse in a relationship with someone that was using methamphetamines. So I had found a partner that also had substance abuse, and I ended up going through 4 years of breakups, abuse. He would kick me out, this, there, and that, and the third. I moved about 14 times. Every couple months, I would just be moving in to rent somebody's room or do something, or sleeping on the floor of my friend's mom's craft room, And then going back with my tail between my legs, begging him to take me back because I didn't have a family. I didn't have anyone. His family was supposed to be my family, so I needed them. That's all I had. That's what I was counting on. So for those 4 years, I was back and forth, 13 different moves-ish. And I was going to college. So I was homeless in and out, sleeping in my car, sleeping at people's houses, living at his house, until finally the drug abuse became too much, the physical and emotional abuse became too much, the verbal abuse became too much, and we finally split up once and for all. And I got my very first own apartment. Despite the little black mold in the shower and, you know, the sink that may spit up once in a while, it's affordable and it's my first home and it's the first place that I've been able to be for this long. And it's the only place no one can tell me I have to leave, except for, you know, the people that can. But it's the first time where I'm living somewhere where someone else's actions aren't going to make me homeless. So I found that stability and I graduated college and I went to work for DCFS because you know what? Why not? Why not? Let's just throw some more wild things into our book and let's just see where that goes.
Awesome. So I also know on top of that, because I'm gonna get back to your work now, you know, you've done a lot of advocacy and, you know, and everything. Before I even get into that portion, when and where did mental health and self-care come in?
That's where I want to know, my friend. I was diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD, and one therapist said that they personally said I had OCD, but only one of them was saying obsessive compulsive, so I don't know about all that. And then another person said I'm somewhere on the autism spectrum. So I've had a lot of different diagnoses. I just fed a lot of Adderall and Ritalin and things like that, and I had some therapy, but the getting down to the root of the trauma didn't really happen. My mental health wasn't addressed when I went to rehab. My mental health wasn't like addressed many places. So it just kind of got swept under the rug many of times until I had one therapist that made sure I could stick with her and wanted to make sure we could work through some of the trauma together. But of course you need more than just a few years of get to know you sessions as a teenager to open up. And I really think that therapy needs to happen now as an adult. I don't think I was ready for that as a kid. Because I was going through so much, I was still in that survival mode that I wasn't ready to deal with the stuff I had been trying to survive 5 years ago, because I'm trying to survive all this right now, right? So that I think that mental health tried to be addressed, but I was going through it, man. I don't think I really could have addressed it if it was better addressed.
Thank you for that, you know. And I appreciate you being open and vulnerable to sharing that, you know. A lot of the time people be like, no, you know, well, you know, I tried doing this and stuff, you know, and that's the truth. You know, they may still be working on it. They may be still trying to figure it out. You
gotta let it settle, really. Like if you therapy for me does not work when I'm in survival mode. I can't.
It doesn't work for it doesn't work for anybody when they're in survival
exactly
mode.
I don't want to speak for nobody but myself, but I don't think it would work for anybody.
I say it, and you know, y'all can be mad at me, but like, your brain is not focused towards, oh, okay, I need to get help, but then you out there trying to do what you got to do to make ends meet after the session.
Exactly.
You know, so are you really hearing? Are you really being receptive towards, you know, the coping skills, the, you know, process of therapy? I don't know. Just for me, I doubt it. I mean, there may be some magical person out there that can, but.
Well, I mean, I would love to meet them, because I would just say how.
So going forward, you know, you've done a lot of advocacy. What has that looked like and why?
When I was out of foster care, one of my old caseworkers reached out to me and said, Natalie, how are you? I want you to represent us in Washington, D.C. Do you want to go represent the state of Utah? And I was like, what? Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, I've never done anything like this before, but sure, I'll go to Washington, D.C. Like, that sounds like fun. And then I went and I got to meet with Orrin Hatch, who is a representative of my state. They worked heavily with Medicaid and CHIP and things like that. And I was thrown into this experience in DC to speak in front of a bunch of people with no preparation. I didn't know why I was even there. Someone tried to tell me what to talk about, but like, it went in one ear, out the other, because it was 5 minutes before having to talk. So my first experience was just thrown in and fell flat on my face. And so then when I came back, I said, I didn't really like that. I didn't feel very prepared. How was I supposed to be prepared for that? And that's when I talked to the caseworker and found out that there is a youth council. And I was recommended to attend the youth council and become a part of the youth council. So I attended the youth council, and somehow I was elected vice president within the first couple of weeks of me attending. Like the third meeting, I was vice president. And as a youth board, we started working on some project with Bill of Rights and wanting to bring some normalcy into our state, some introduction videos of what foster care is like for the youth to see. And then I made my way to president, and I was able to go to the place where I met you, Washington, D.C. again with the NEAKC and the Children's Bureau. And I was submerged into what the beauty of our advocacy really can and does look like. I was able to meet young people across the entire country with experiences like mine and visions like mine and hope like me, and I connected with them, and I saw adults that were doing things that made me go, I want to be them. I want to do what they're doing. And that trip to DC right there solidified I wanted to be an advocate, and I want to do national foster care advocacy. I want to change the system on a national level, not just at a state level. So then I was able to apply for Foster Club, and I became Foster Club's 2020 All-Star, which was the first virtual internship they ever had. So I got we were their guinea pigs to virtual advocacy and facilitation.
Awesome. So, while we're in that, virtual, COVID. It has happened, and I ask this question a lot because, I don't think a lot of the world understands how COVID affected people who have lived experience or that were in care, so how did it affect you, in your life?
It made me go back to that ex that was abusing me and using drugs because I didn't know where to go or who to stay with during a pandemic. And I didn't know how I was going to survive because I couldn't get any toilet paper, and I didn't have anyone to ask if I could borrow some of their toilet paper. So what did I do? I reached out to my ex and his parents that had taken custody of me in the past and said, hey, can I come stay with you? And I put myself right back through that hell cycle that I had finally escaped and finally been free from for a few months, almost a year. And I was right back in it. Wow. And it scared me, right? Because everyone was going back home to their moms and their dads, and I didn't know what to do. I had no one.
Mm-hmm. And you went, like what I hear is like you went back to people who you thought was going to have your back.
I mean, people that had even been designated by the state of Utah to have my back. A little bit at least.
Man. So going into expertise and the work that you do now, what does that look like,
Yeah, so I was hired as Utah's first lived experience worker, youth coordinator that works with young adults in transition. And the state has never had that role. So it's taking some warming up to people. I'm sure, as you know, uplifting lived experience isn't something that's really been around all that long, or really been appreciated all that long, I guess, or pushed very hard. So I'm kind of pushing some boundaries and pushing some norms and questioning some roadblocks that we put in front of ourselves as an agency. And I'm really making the agency think about, why are we doing some of the things that we do for these young people the way we're doing it? And is this serving them the way it should be serving them? So it allows me to give my lived experience lens as to, well, why are we doing that way? That's not going to help the youth. The youth don't want that. So for example, say we do a job fair. Every job fair, who do you see? Well, Division of Workforce Services, someone for food stamps, someone for Job Corps, the basics, right? The stuff that we all are always told that that's what we can do. But that's not what my kids want. They want a tattoo artist there to see how they opened up their own tattoo shop. They want a mechanic there to learn how to be a mechanic. So it's just bringing that lens of lived experience. What did I want when I was in foster care? What would have served me when I was in foster care? What are these young people telling me will serve them? What are they saying they want out of their life? And how can we as an agency uplift and support that? Because we're taking them out of an environment, putting it into our own. So we need to support them into getting into the environment they want to be in. So that's my job. That's what I get to do. I get to uplift the youth voice, and they tell me something they want. I try and figure out how we can make that possible.
Awesome. Wow.
And, there's like being youth voice, being an advocate for youth, being a mentor, a lot of different things that are also part of that. But my favorite piece is just like being able to listen to the youth and hear what they want and what they need and what they see going on, and saying, well, let's figure out how to change that.
So I know, with working in this work, sometimes it can give you like a self-realization, more times than not. So how has it been personally for you, working, talking to these youth and what have you, how has that, came back at you in your experience?
It's been really bittersweet. Because I can't say I fully trust the system myself. The system failed me, and I'm watching the system fail kids every day. So I can't say that it's, always a happy experience. There is a lot of resentment that comes along with this position, because I go, wow, they made these mistakes with me 20 plus years ago, and they're still making them with these kids today. What are we doing wrong? But then it's a double-edged sword. On the other side, I see so many incredible things that have changed since I was in care. And I do see people really trying to change some of their mindsets and the ways they view what foster care is, what transitioning into adulthood really is, how to support a youth. So it's like this double-edged sword. And I feel like I'm just kind of like stabbing myself, like impaling myself, and then I'm just like jiggling on out, I'm good, and then I just kind of like keep impaling myself. I guess that's the best I can kind of describe it. It's so painful, but when that dagger comes out, that relief, and it just feels so good to see something good happening, because the reality is the system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly how it was made to function. And that's why we need to change the way the system functions. We need to change the system, because it's not broken. It's functioning how it's supposed to. So it's up to us to make it function the way we want it to instead.
Wow. So, as I conclude, I have a couple more questions. Two rather. What's next for yourself?
What is next for me? I wanted to go do my master's in social work, but one of the realities that I think you'll understand of being a foster care advocate is our story has an expiration. My lived experience is only relevant to a certain degree, and then it's my job to uplift the new lived experience. The child welfare system changes a lot. So me going up and doing advocacy in 30 years may not be my plan. So I plan to just really hit that advocacy as hard as I can the next 5 to 10 years, take a break from school, go see what national organizations are out there. I really want to advocate for adoption for teens, because I really feel like that's something that I still wish I could have had today or right now. If I had someone to adopt, I totally would get adopted. So I want to do some things like that. I don't think I really want to stay in a state agency. I want to really branch out, but I'll go back for a master's in social work someday and open up a transitional home like I plan. So it'll just be a transitional complex for young people aging out of the foster care system, which will have wraparound services on campus, therapy access, all different things like that once I get my master's. But I'm really just going to push on that advocacy for the next few years, so then I can try and uplift new young people to become advocates as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. It has been a privilege and pleasure having you on. I just, I speak to some of these things so often, and I try to explain to the best of my ability, but it's always different when you speak to someone and they're able to explain, and this is happening in a totally different state. This is happening to a totally
different. It's crazy. All the same things are happening. All the
different. So my last thing for you is, what advice, and I'm gonna break this up, what advice could you give to those foster parents that are out there thinking about fostering or are fostering? What advice could you give to those staff that works at these group homes, and seeing kids come in and out, and they truly have a heart for this, and trying to help how they can?
Yeah.
What advice, also, because it's a list, so stay with me. What advice do you have for those caseworkers, and people who work for, I'm gonna mess this up, DCFS,
yeah.
I think. Yes. And as do you have for those people who are in care and are alumni of care?
Okay. So the advice to the foster placements, I would say, give grace. You are taking a kid in at possibly one of the lowest points in their life. Nothing is familiar. I think we have this idea that everyone is supposed to settle in within a certain amount of time, or that trauma displays itself in a certain way. All I would say is, don't believe any of that. Trauma is going to come out in any way it wants. A kid is going to take as long as they need to feel comfortable and to feel safe in your home. You can do certain things to influence that and make them feel safer, make them feel more uncomfortable, and to, support them through that trauma. But the reality is, there is no box. We are not cookie cutter. We don't fit into that. Every one of us has a different journey to healing. So support that young person and try to be gracious. If they're still fighting with you and you feel like they hate you within 6 months, give them another 6 months. Maybe it's that one more month is what they needed to, deal with a little bit of that resentment, to feel like someone wanted them, to feel like someone would put up with them, or not just give up on them when the going gets tough. So I really would just say, give grace to the healing process being different for everyone that comes through your home. And with the group home staff, you may be temporary, but we never forget you. You become permanent role models and bonds for many of us. I have foster sisters that we talk about as staff all day long about still how we miss them. So I would just say, don't lessen don't view your impact on us as lesser. You really can make that space for transformative healing. You really can begin that space for making us feel safe to open up and feel comfortable. Some of those people are who really made me feel safe throughout all of those years, were my staff. So please don't undermine the safety and security that you do provide as being you. And foster youth, who was the other person? Caseworkers. I'm going to do foster youth last, of course, because they get the good one. I save the best for last. Sorry, y'all, but like I am hella biased. Like foster kids are the best for last. So caseworkers, I would say know your case beyond the case. We are more than our file. We are more than the 10-minute conversation that we get once in a while. Just try to know us beyond what just the file says, because perceptions are everything. And I think sometimes, I myself included, as somebody that's working in child welfare, we get so many youth throughout the day that we're just kind of going through the file. But try and know your young person by the relationship you build with them and not just their case, because the relationship you will have with that young person that's built on that connection and that trust and that rapport is a whole lot different than the one of you just sliding through their case. And for foster youth, don't let these experiences that happen to you, don't take it personally. Don't make yourself think that you caused this, that you are the reason for this, that it's your fault. You are a young person that is going through foster care, and it's going to look different for you. It's going to be full of ups and downs, but when it's over, it's over. And then you have a chance to use your voice and your experience to make it better for others. And I really think that that's what we all have an obligation to do, is speak up and survive it, live through it. Don't blame yourself for what's happening to you, and then use your experience to do something good. Don't let it hold you back from what you want to do.
Well, like I said before, it has been an honor and privilege being able to see you again, and also just being able to speak to you and hear your story and your truth, your experience. You know, I appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty. And I think, but I'm not going to say I think, I know from you sharing your story, to the extent that you have, being open, we'll be able to help some young ladies, be able to help some people who are fostering and know how to support or see some signs of some things, you know, help some caseworkers be more intentful, to make sure that there's not gaps to.
And they want to listen.
Yes.
They want to hear what you have to say. Really, we can make an impact. Thank you. We really can.
Definitely. Do you have any last comments or anything for me?
I just want to thank you for having this space for us. I know that we are in an alum group chat, and you know, your podcast is exactly what we need everywhere. We need them happening constantly. We need them as live videos. We need them as conferences. We need them at summits. We need them everywhere, because this is what really affirms our experience. And it's makes us feel not tokenized and not used, and we're able to be real. So I just want to thank you for making this the space that I know you've read every one of us alum wants to have and thinks needs to be everywhere. So you are just so amazing, and I hope to see you so soon.
Definitely. Well, you guys know, as I always say, you know, COVID is out there, it's doing its thing. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself, making sure that you're, you know, doing what you need to do to secure your package and your village, you know. So stay healthy, stay safe out there. Outside of that, we talked about a lot of things that could be triggering, you know. So make sure if you listen to this and you feel triggered or what have you, you know, you lean into those supports. And those coping skills, you know, if you need to make an emergency session with your therapist, if you got one, go ahead and do that, you know, whatever is your mental health niche, you know, to make sure that you're good. Do that, you know, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, you know. Outside of that, you know, thank you. I'm getting close to the end here. I'm trying to make it to episode 50 by the 31st. And I'm chipping away. This has been a journey, and I can't thank you guys enough. I can't thank the guests who have been on enough, because there has been many days where I'm just like, I don't know if this is helpful. I don't know if this is where I need to be, and every day and every time I do these and every time I provide, you guys reassure me that this is needed. And this is what you guys want to hear. And this is the time for it. And I appreciate it. So I hope you guys have a great night, great morning, great evening, great ride to work, great ride home from work, whichever you are listening to this. Just let it be great. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.